if you have any kind of chronic pain like that or disease, when you can find something that works, like it brings tears to my eyes because it consumes you both physically but mentally, whether it's the pain you're in or it's the things that it's holding you back from doing. For me, it wasn't just exercise. My back, many occasions, I have to ask my kids to pick up boxes for me. I think about the spring and how am I ever going to be able to just pull up weeds or rake my lawn? I don't want to be like that. Hey, Nicole, what do you get when a former corporate CEO and a do-gooding executive walk into a recording studio?
Well, Erin, nothing, because the two of us are usually on my couch or Zoom, because wine.
You get a podcast created for Gen X women who are bought into the corporate world, but fed up with the BS.
I know. It's how to thrive the 9 to 5 or 6 or 7.
It's career therapy. It's comedy. It's definitely full-on authenticity. Basically, we give you tangible strategies to rise in your career without compromising everything else.
Because work doesn't have to suck.
Hey guys, it's Erin here, and I'm going to do a solo episode today. This is a little bit unusual, although I've done them in the past, but I have sort of all this like pent up knowledge and passion and energy that I want to share with you real time about my health journey. And it's like I say, health journey, that it's not dramatic. I'm so lucky. I'm 49 years old, and it's not that I've been hit with sort of a major disease, and I feel so blessed, but I've really been struggling with a chronic issue, my back. And over the last 2 or 3 months, I feel like I've learned more about my body and health and food than I have in the last 20 years, which, I was a healthcare executive. So that's a little bit scary. And it's also super normal. And so I wanted to share with you today 5 surprising things that I've found over the last few months. And, who is this worth listening? It's not probably worth listening for everyone, although there might be some nuggets, but I think a couple things in particular. One, if you are, I'd say in your 40s, even maybe early 40s, you're potentially perimenopause or heading that direction. I think this is really good. You'll hear some surprising things. And I get it if you turn off. I was sort of like, whatever, this menopause bullshit, but holy crap. There's so much I wish I would have known earlier. And sometimes you have to hear it multiple times. You have to hear it at the right time, sometimes with the right challenges that are forcing you to really listen. That's kind of my journey, and maybe that's for you. And then also if you're dealing with a chronic illness of any sort or a chronic injury, I think it'll be interesting. And then quite frankly, some of the things that I found, especially women, but also just this concept of being actually proactive with your health and not being truly preventive, not preventive in the like, oh, I got my screenings. Like, it's amazing how much we label preventive and how much we're missing. So I'm going to share those 5 things and kind of do that, but narrate it through my story and what's going on, and sort of, stop along the way and tell you the surprising things. So a little background, again, it's not dramatic, but it's been my health issue of the last 5 years, and really of the last year. It's been a bane of my existence in some ways. But about 5 years ago, I had my first back injury, and it wasn't that bad. I come to find out, it took me a couple months to figure out that it was because of the ergonomic changes. I had just started working from home, starting my business, and didn't have an office yet, and was like camped out at a horrible dining room table and chairs. And it wasn't until I took a vacation for a couple weeks, I'm like, gosh, I feel really good. And then I came back and I didn't. And I was like, oh crap, I know what it's from. And it wasn't so bad. I got through it. I can't remember if I did physical therapy at that time, but I remember sort of once I realized it, sort of overcoming it. But then about every 9 months, it would rear its ugly head. And it was usually pretty obvious. So something to know about me, I love working out. And I love working out. And I also, like, part of my quote unquote brand, if you will, or my being was like, I love to work out so I can eat. Like, I was all about the workout. I've been a runner. I also joined a gym 4 or so years ago, maybe 5 years ago now, 5 years ago, F45, that I really loved. And I never loved gyms before. And so my whole thing always was, but then I can eat. Like, and I'd eat, I can eat cheeseburgers and fast food, but, I loved my chips and my Sweets, very much love my sweets, but it was sort of like, yeah, well, I work out and so I deserve it. And that's the path I choose because I firmly believe you can't necessarily do them both so well. And so every time this back issue would come back, of course, it would come back worse and worse until last year. It was the first time I ended up sort of in the emergency room slash urgent care, my first sort of really acute incident. And I got through it mostly, I think, through physical therapy, rest, which is tough for a back. You have to rest, but also you can't rest too much. And then it came back this past fall, so October of this last year. And I finally took a break because it was just aching me. And then it got worse and worse. And so pretty much the months of October, November, December, I was dealing with it. I went to 2 different physical therapists. I went on and off to my chiropractor. I'd have some relief, but never could really get rid of it until um sort of had this moment in January where it got really bad again. And usually it's my fault. Like it's me going and like doing box jumps or going for a run and feeling great while I ran. And then the next day realizing I don't feel so great. And so this happened in January, right before I had a big trip to Cabo San Lucas planned for work. I was going to both keynote and then lead an offsite session. And it's a haul. And I'm like, I cannot be in this much pain and make the trip and also, do my vocation, speak, have the energy, et cetera. And so I was working with my physical therapist and we weren't really getting any traction. And so she said, well, you might need a steroid to help with the inflammation. Now, when I hear steroid, I'm not a big fan of steroids, mainly because I think anytime I've had them, which is mostly for poison ivy, to be honest, I've, had it a few times on my face where I had to get an oral steroid. And I always remember having like night sweats and, when you have night sweats and you're taking a medication, you're like, that cannot be doing good things to my body. So I was like, "Ugh, I don't really want to get a steroid. So that weekend, I was like, well, maybe I'll try Aleve. I'm not a big Aleve user. I usually use ibuprofen when I have a headache, et cetera. And so they say to take 2 Aleve to start, and then you do 1 every 8 to 12 hours. And probably within an hour or 2, I felt better than I felt in 4 months. And I was like, oh my gosh, I finally have some relief. And so while I went on the trip, I took Aleve, a couple times a day. And I still wasn't out of pain, but I definitely felt better. And so get back from the trip. And I now understand that the Aleve wasn't just about the pain relief. It's actually helping with inflammation, which, look, so much of this stuff, you're like, duh, which I mean, duh for me too, right? You hear these things, but until, like I said, you hear it at the right time. And sometimes when you're in that sort of desperate position is only when, logic will sink in. So, I knew I couldn't be on a leave all my life, but I needed to reduce the inflammation. So I just started getting curious. In fact, I remember I went for a walk with a friend and she texted me after like top 5 fruits for reducing inflammation. And I just, within like a hot second, which is kind of how I operate once I put my mind to something, I had, done all of this research. And that really gets me to the first surprising thing I've learned. And again, I know it's for some of you might be like, that's so elementary, Erin, but I didn't realize how much food can either negatively impact or can help with inflammation, which helps with these aches, these pains, these chronic diseases. And so it's crazy. Within 2 days, I had sort of flipped my diet on its head. I mean, I was total sugar addict. I eat dessert after every meal, just about. In the afternoons, I would be shoving any kind of candy in my mouth. And so I started eating fruits. I even got dragon fruit. Started shopping at Whole Foods for some things. I'm like, who am I? Got like flaxseed granola and all these things. And I almost immediately felt better. It was crazy. Because even once I went off that leave, or when I was on it, I wasn't still feeling perfect. I felt even better. And so that was sort of surprising thing number one. I mean, my diet, like you hear it all the time, but I could not believe how immediately, right? I had always thought about diet in terms of like getting skinnier, let's be honest. And right, that's not an instant reward thing. There's a long tail to it. It feels like punishment. And so as soon as I could see one, that food actually has medical benefits, and two, like that I was getting immediate benefits. So it propelled me. It made it a lot easier that it wasn't a punishment. It was actually a reward. It's amazing. My mindset is just like flipped on its head in terms of food. So that's number one. The second thing I started doing, and these all kind of collided, maybe not coincidentally, because I was getting very curious about my health. But at the same time, I was talking to a friend, hockey friend, and she had told me about seeing this integrative health, APRN, or they're also functional medicine. So you might have heard the terms functional medicine or integrative health is sort of the same thing. And oh my God, this is the future. This is what we should all be seeing. I made an appointment and it took some fortitude. I think that conversation was back in like November and it took forever and I had to fill out forms and I had to, fight against inertia and I had to pay, I think it's a $200 fee. Sort of, they have sort of a mixed business model where there's sort of a membership setup fee, but then they also bill insurance for visits. So there's a lot of friction to getting it set up, but I'm so happy I did it. So I had my first visit in January. And first of all, they sit with you for an hour and they actually talk about everything and they care. They look at things holistically, which is really, the benchmark that they're trying to set. And we did a full panel blood test, but we also did a GI test, which was not fun to do, but it's whatever. It's one day and you collect the samples and you get it done. And I mean, this is really the second thing I learned. One, I'd heard about functional and integrative medicine, but, I'm like, I don't really know exactly what they do. And here's a couple like surprising things I uncovered for me personally, where you might say, oh, well, I do a blood test on my annual physical. Like, it's not the same. It's not the same. So the first thing was, so most of my blood tests came back normal, good, but my cholesterol's high. And I think it had been high a couple of years ago, but just sort of eked over norms, and it was much higher this time. And the surprising thing wasn't so much that, was that once we knew we had that, she said, well, there's a test you can do. It's called a coronary calcium scan. And it tests, I think, the four main arteries to see if there's any buildup yet. And it's funny. She said, well, here's the bad news. Insurance doesn't pay for it. Although I've talked to people since, and I think someone said they had it. So it might be covered, but it was $100. So I'm like, I really don't care that insurance doesn't cover it. And so within less than a week, I made an appointment at a radiology center. This scan took me, I think, but definitely the registration took longer than the actual scan. I went into a room. They sort of put you back into this tube. I don't think it's quite as, you're claustrophobic as like an MRI, which I've never done, but it was super, super easy. Hold my breath a couple times. I might have been in that room for all of 5 minutes. And 2 days later, the good news was that came back at 0, which means there isn't any buildup. So, so many people, you have high cholesterol and then they're like, well, you should probably go on a cholesterol medicine. And so it was really nice to know that I had breathing room and that, changes to my diet should really help with that. And that I didn't have to worry about, potential heart disease. So I didn't even know about that. And I've told friends. So yes, the cholesterol, coronary calcium scan. The second thing that I found, and again, there's probably, I'm like just touching the surface because there's a million things they test. But in my GI test, one of the things, again, most things were normal. But one of the things she found is that I have something that they call leaky gut. It also has dysbiosis is a name for it, or SIBO. I don't know. There's a couple, but essentially, I produce these microbiomes and there's an overgrowth of them. And it's kind of gross, but it emits methane gas. And essentially, not only does it have symptoms that come with it, so it makes you gassier, which kind of jives, but it also prevents you from absorbing fats as well, which, on the surface sounds great, but it's actually a bad thing. You're metabolized differently. It just really screws up how you do things. And in fact, she said, well, that actually makes sense. When you said that you're always craving sugar, that is one of the symptoms of having this. And so now that I know I have it, there's 2 courses of treatment. You can either go through a couple of different antibiotics for a quicker fix. It's like a 2-week Or you can do longer. And I took the longer, more noble, if you will. I took the more natural. I'm going to be taking these things called candy bioactins. So I think it's basically like an herbal solution. But like what I want you to know here is not necessarily that you have, I mean, maybe you do. Maybe you have the symptoms of this and you want to Google it and look into it. But there's so many things if you have symptoms and you think things are, or maybe you don't even go to a doctor, they don't get to that place, or you go to a doctor, like there are so many things this would probably be like the 17th thing they would test for if I went into a regular primary care physician. But by just, saying like, I want to get ahead of menopause and getting older and be proactive beyond just my cancer screenings, look at all the things I found. And it's so nice to know I'm ahead of them and that there's solutions for them. Hey, Erin here. Look, I am so happy you're here listening to the Because Work Doesn't Have to Suck podcast. But I'm also guessing that some days it can be tough to get over here, and you may not always have the time to throw in your earbuds for half an hour or an hour. So if you also want career and leadership tips, inspiration, and quite frankly, professional pot stirring, the best bite-sized way to get that from me is to connect on LinkedIn. Almost daily, I share tips, inspiration, and humor to help you, maybe your less than authentic boss too, be more authentic at work. You can find me by searching my name. I'm literally the only Erin Hatzakostas in the world, or at least the online world. So if you can spell it, you can find me. Or we make it easy. You can scroll down to the show notes and click the link there. See you there. So that was just really interesting and kind of takes this whole functional medicine thing out of a black box. And, just a few examples of the things that you can find and that you can do things about. And then, as I started getting more involved in my health and the inflammation and all, started holistically looking at diet and things like that and really understanding perimenopause, I'm starting to realize how much this perimenopause and the reduction in hormones, how many things it can affect ladies. And it starts like some people starts late 30s into your 40s. So over the last 4 or 5 years, I have gained about 10 or 12 pounds. I was a very steady weight person. And to be honest, I really kind of blamed it on COVID. Like I ate too many chocolate chip cookies to like make sure I survived COVID. But meanwhile, I was working out. I've been working out 6 days a week, roughly, since COVID. I mean, and shouldn't have gained 12 pounds. And now realizing it's not just the hormones, like I'm a victim, there's nothing you can do about it. Actually, your diet can really have something to do with that. And I'm going to talk about that next. But sleep, I thought, oh, my only symptom of perimenopause is that once in a while I get night sweats. No, I also realized, wait, the reason I wake up at like 3, 4 in the morning, and a lot of times I can't go back to bed is this. And if you start to look at the list of potential symptoms, you're like, holy crap, like there is so much it affects. So really understanding it, getting tested and looking at options. So, I did go down the path of considering hormone replacement therapy. I'm actually stepped back from that. And I'll tell you a little bit about that and why. But there are options around hormone replacement therapy that has changed significantly. They use really bioidentical hormones now. It's not fake hormones from like cows and stuff. It's actually bioidentical. So it's much safer and can be a way to manage it. But the other way to manage it is through diet and exercise. And that's sort of the fifth thing. So the fourth and fifth thing, I guess I learned. So now that I'm like attuned to like, okay, hormones matter, diet matters. It's not just that I'm getting old, that I don't just have to succumb to extra weight or chronic injuries. I started really going down the path of, understanding nutrition a little bit more. And let me tell you, places like Instagram help you a lot because as soon as you like watch one, and I watched like one woman's video talking about perimenopause and workouts and macronutrient ingredients, like the algorithms are not stupid. So they started throwing all these other things my way. They clearly know what I'm focused on right now in a hot second. but in some ways I'm happy. So the fourth thing I learned was about this concept of macronutrient ingredients. And again, you might be like, where the hell have you been, Erin? I'm like, I don't know, under a rock. Or remember, because my whole brand was I get to eat what I want because I work out, and how was that working out for me? Not so good. Back injury, weight gain. And so if you haven't heard of macronutrients, I think I called it macro ingredients. I don't know. Macronutrients. It's this concept that the macronutrients are primarily protein, carbohydrates, and fat. And that the number that you hit of these at a macro level, which I love because I'm such a macro thinker versus a micro thinker, is more important than sort of traditional like fat counting, calorie counting, and that composition of how much protein you should have in a day, how much fat you should have in a day, because they're good fats too, and how much carbohydrates really depends on your hormone levels, your age, your workout. Like there is a formula that you can work with. And if you start to track these at a macro level, you can start to reverse the things that you thought you couldn't control. Like I'm getting older and I'm just gaining weight or, I can't build muscle anymore. And so I'm really, really excited. I actually slapped down a pretty big investment for sort of a health and fitness coach over the next year, something I've never done. And it was just a program that really spoke to me. It's both group stuff, but I also have a personal coach they meet with, and it's very tailored approach. And I'm really excited about it. I like to feel like I'm in control. And I just haven't felt like I kind of have been depressed about this. Like, well, I guess the best years are over. And I guess, no longer can wear a two-piece swimming suit without like wanting to throw up. And like those years are behind me. And honestly, that made me really sad. Like that made me feel like getting older was just, you know, mostly a negative path. And I don't want to feel like that, right? Because there's so much, to get excited about, whether it's my career and travel and, more freedom. Um, and so I think I really am excited about the fact that I have to take a new approach and I need that help to take that new approach. But like, I don't have to be a victim. And at my 50s, I don't have to be softer, chunkier, feel crappier about my body than I did in my 40s and 30s. So if you haven't heard of that, look into it. And then the last thing, back to my back, kind of going full circle, this has been, like I said, the bane of my existence and pain. And I've tried kind of everything. I've thrown everything at it. I'm not somebody that doesn't, take action. And after I was having so many challenges and the physical therapy wasn't seeming to work anymore, I took to the internet. I took to Google in desperation, probably like so many people do. And I found this program, $67, which was like nothing fancy. It's a physical therapist who found this system and curated this system based on, some learning that he learned from some guy from another country or whatever. And they hooked me in. They had like thousands of testimonials of people that were basically saying the same thing. Like, I've tried everything. And so I said, well, what the hell? Like, what could go wrong? I'm going to give this a try. And I started it last Thursday. And by Friday, I felt better than I felt in a long time. Now, my back pain is not completely gone. Part of it is I have to discipline myself to actually freaking slow down, because that's part of my problem. I would heal myself or think I was healed, and then I would go back to like box jumping and doing all my things and then be pissed that, I'd hurt myself again. It's like, duh, give yourself some rest and some peace, which is hard for me because just I get fueled by that energy of working out. But anyway, so started doing this program, and there's a series of 8 exercises. And if anybody has back issues and like me has tried everything, and please send an email, hello@beauthenticinc.com, or find me on LinkedIn or whatever. You know how to get a hold of me. And I'm happy to share the information. But here's what was, I think, so key about this. Not only does it have a series, it's like 80% stretching and 20% strength, because you'll find if you've ever had a back issue, you'll learn like some people think it's all about stretching. Some people are like, oh, it's all about strengthening the muscles around it. This is a combination. But there's a third component. And the third component really is this mind-body connection. And it's something actually my friend Leslie was talking to me about when I was out in Vegas last week. We made up for dinner. And so, usually these things come in twos or threes, right? All of a sudden, you're hearing it everywhere or you're listening to it, basically, right? Instead of ignoring it. And it's nothing woo-woo. It's just the simple concept that when you're doing those exercises and those stretches, that you really need to be purposeful. You need to visualize your back and how you are working that and how you are visualizing the repair. And, I am so good at doing the thing, but doing it mindlessly, right? And just trying to get through it because then I got to go get ready for another podcast episode or put together another keynote or whatever, right? Boom, boom, boom. You're the same way. Get to our emails, get to this, get through, check the box for the thing that I'm supposed to do. And the thing we don't do is actually focus and really breathe, because that breath isn't just, again, woo-woo stuff either. It's medicine. And it's so simple, but it's amazing. I did things like I put on my headset and put on meditation music when I do it. I do breathe kind of like I would breathe in a yoga class. Like I really put my intention, and I have also just really focused on healing and visualizing that healing and visualizing the muscles that I'm repairing and I'm also strengthening, and not just going through the motions. And it's working. And let me just tell you, like, if you have any kind of chronic pain like that or disease, when you can find something that works, like it, it brings tears to my eyes because it consumes you both physically, but mentally, whether it's the pain you're in or it's the things that it's holding you back from doing. For me, it wasn't just exercise. My back, many occasions, I have to ask my kids to pick up boxes for me. I think about the spring and how am I ever going to be able to just pull up weeds or rake my lawn? Like, I don't want to be like that, right? And so I'm just so happy that, all of this has kind of come together, and it's not a linear line, but I feel like I'm like in my chrysalis for my next, hopefully 40 or 50 years. I'm really coming into this new phase where, I loved the phase before, and I'm so glad that running and doing HIIT workouts and doing those high energy things was such a part of me, and it served me so well. But I'm also happy that for whatever reason, all the signs have pointed me into understanding that there's time to pivot, as crappy as that word is, and to find a new path and to listen to things that I poo-pooed before. I so poo-pooed like eating well and food is medicine. I've heard it a million times, but I thought, well, yes, but that doesn't apply to me. And so I hope by sharing this story, it's not, like I said, I'm lucky. It's not dramatic. It's not, cancer or heart disease. It's, but that's my hope, is to learn these things and train on these things when I'm dealing with these physical issues and limitations that aren't so serious, so that when I get into that phase, inevitably, right, I'm going to be 50 in 4 months, things are going to start to break, and I want to have control. And I want you to have control too. So I'm hoping that even just one of these things speaks to you, makes you curious, makes you start to Google, makes you reach out and ask questions. Because, we've been doing this podcast for like 5 years and we talk about a lot of things, but let's be honest, nothing is more important than our health. So thank you for listening. Hope this was helpful, and I'll keep you posted, right? Because the journey is just beginning. What I find, what I go through, I'm sure the peaks and the valleys, I'll be back to share those things too.
Hey, it's Erin with a teeny request. If you have ever gotten any value from this podcast and you'd like us to stick around, plus you want it to continue to grow so we can kind of swindle bigger and more knowledgeable guests to join us, and to keep providing you with tangible and inspiring actions you can take to achieve the career and life you deserve, could you please just take 1 minute to leave us a rating and a review? Those reviews go a long way in attracting guests to the show, and candidly, they really make Nicole and I's day. We see you. We really do. So when you have the time and inspiration, we'd love to see a rating and review from you. Thank you.